Let's talk about the Cleveland Browns and Deshaun Watson because you can make a case that this could be the most dangerous and most complete team in that division. I understand that it's one of the toughest divisions in the NFL. You can make the case that it is the toughest division in the NFL. I'm not saying that the Cleveland Browns are going to go out there and win the Super Bowl per se, but with the talent that they have, they are a very good football team. They just went 11-6, and they did suffer a tough loss against the Houston Texans. But Deshaun Watson missed a good portion of this season, and that's been the case over the last couple of years. Now, Deshaun Watson is a quarterback that the Cleveland Browns view as a franchise quarterback. Eventually, they're going to have to get some return on this investment. They went 4-1 with Deshaun Watson this season. In his last game against the Baltimore Ravens, he was perfect in the second half. And he made the Ravens defense look like Swiss cheese. He was phenomenal in that game. Unfortunately, he went out due to a shoulder injury. And he played that Ravens game with a shoulder injury, which is crazy to think about as well. Deshaun Watson proved this season, those couple of games, that he is still a very good quarterback in the NFL. And you can go back a couple of years ago when he was with the Houston Texans, the Cleveland Browns would have killed to have a quarterback like this. I think if Deshaun Watson can stay fully healthy, they could be one of the better teams, not only in this division, but in the AFC, because you look at the talent that they have around Deshaun Watson. Let's start off with the wide receiving core. Amari Cooper has been phenomenal with this team. They made a trade to go get him from the Dallas Cowboys. His first couple of years with this team, he's looked very good. Amari Cooper this season had a career year. He had 72 catches for 1,250 receiving yards, 5 receiving touchdowns. He averaged 17 yards a catch. He did that with catching balls from guys like Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Joe Flacco, and Deshaun Watson, and also PJ Walker as well. And that's also one thing that you want to mention. They had so many different starting quarterbacks this season, and the fact that they went out there and still made the NFL playoffs is a credit to Kevin Stefanski, who is one of the best coaches in the NFL as we speak right now, because all the injuries that he had to deal with besides the quarterback position. I'll get into more of the injuries in just a second. But when you look at the complete wide receiving core, it's a very good wide receiving core. Amari Cooper is a true number one wide receiver. He's one of the best route runners in the NFL. They made a trade to go get Elijah Moore a year ago. Only 640 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, but he's a very good wide receiver as well, especially when he is that number 2 option. Then they just went out there and they traded for Jerry Jeudy. I think that Jerry Jeudy will show his full potential with this Cleveland Browns team. For one, he fits the system of Kevin Stefanski. He's a smooth route runner that can go out there, take the top off the defense, and is very good at intermediate routes as well. You may ask the question, why hasn't he been able to have that success with the Denver Broncos? Bad offensive structure and horrible quarterback play from guys like Russell Wilson. And his first year when he was with Nathaniel Hackett, they did not know how to use Jerry Jeudy. It was just completely horrible. You had Teddy Bridgewater mixed in there and Drew Lock as well. So not the best quarterbacks to play with if you are a young wide receiver. And we've seen wide receivers in the past benefit from a change of scenery. Jerry Jeudy will have some major drops here and there, but a lot of that was not on him. You had to go out there and contort his body because of bad balls by the quarterback. And some of the drops, they were on Jerry Jeudy. He had some major concentration drops as well, but that was early in his career. I think that he'll be in a better situation with Deshaun Watson and with Kevin Stefanski calling plays as well. When you look at his numbers, they're very solid. 856 receiving yards his rookie season. In his sophomore season, 467 receiving yards, 0 receiving touchdowns. In 2022, 972 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns. And this season, 758 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. And another reason why I think Jerry Jeudy will have a positive impact on this team, this is a Browns team that already have their 2 top targets. You have Amari Cooper and also David Njoku. David Njoku was amazing this season. He had 862 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns. He finally broke out with this team. A couple of years ago, you had the big 3, quote unquote, in that first round. They drafted Myles Garrett, Jabril Peppers, and David Njoku. And we saw the last couple of years, Jabril Peppers was not able to work out with this team, but David Njoku is finally coming to his own because they have the right quarterback and the right system with this team. And when you look at the offensive structure, it's very unique. They run their way and it sets up the pass game. They have a strong run game with Nick Chubb. And you do worry about Nick Chubb because he suffered 2 brutal knee injuries right now. One in college and one a couple months ago against the Steelers on the Monday Night Football game. That was just a game from hell for the Cleveland Browns. Also in that game, they had Jack Conklin go down with an injury as well, and he missed the rest of the season. But when you look at Nick Chubb, if he can just be half of what he was in the past, I think that you'll still have a very good run game with him. You also signed Deontay Foreman. Now, Deontay Foreman is not a true every down back, but he's a solid running back to have. He's not bad by any means. Jerome Ford came in and he gave you some good production. He's no Nick Chubb, but he had 813 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. And he was very good against the New York Jets on a Thursday night football game when the Cleveland Browns went out there and they clinched the playoffs by winning that game. And he played with Joe Flacco as well. When you look at the offensive line, I think they're very solid. Jedrick Wills Jr. is not that same tackle that he was his rookie season. The production has slipped, but he's not a bad tackle by any means. I don't think that he's one of the worst tackles in the NFL, but he's not one of the best tackles either. He's just a solid tackle to have around. And in today's NFL, you would take that for most teams in the NFL. But you look at the right tackle situation, it's a bit interesting. Jack Conklin is a solid veteran to have around, but DeJuan Jones came in for when Jack Conklin went down, and he looked very good. DeJuan Jones is a mountain of a man. He is 6'8", 375 pounds. Ridiculous. And I do think that he has potential to be one of the best tackles in the NFL. That is how high I am on this kid. You can have a situation to where you could possibly move Jack Conklin to left tackle, but like I mentioned before, Jedrick Wills isn't that bad for you just to pull him and just say, we're done with this kid. He has some good moments. So we may look in the situation next couple of years, they let Jack Conklin leave, or they just let him walk in free agency, or they trade him away, and then he just put DeJuan Jones in that starting right tackle spot because he looked very good. Unfortunately, he did go down as well, and they were down to James Hudson to be their starting right tackle. So the offensive line was beat up. The quarterback position was not ideal with this team, but you have to call Joe Flacco from home on his couch. That's literally how things went. And you still make the NFL playoffs. So as long as the offense can stay healthy, they have these wide receivers can go out there and they can help out Deshaun Watson. They should be in a great situation. I know a lot of people speak down on the Cleveland Browns because of what happened over the last couple of decades, but this is a different Cleveland Browns team. The ownership has went out there. They made better decisions with the draft picks. You may question the Deshaun Watson decision right now. I'm in this camp right here. Deshaun Watson missed all of his last season with the Houston Texans because he no longer wanted to play with that team. Then some nasty allegations came out. His first season with the Cleveland Browns, he was suspended for 12 games. He had 7 passing touchdowns to 5 interceptions. And this was going to be his first full season with the team. Unfortunately, it was cut short. And that does suck. And he dealt with some injuries leading up to that shoulder injury as well. Hopefully Deshaun Watson can stay healthy, because if he can't, that's going to be a horrible trade to look back on. And I still stand in this camp as well. Even if Baker Mayfield was to stick around, I don't think that it would have worked out with the Cleveland Browns or Baker Mayfield. He needed a change of scenery, and Kevin Stefanski needed a different quarterback. But if Deshaun Watson is fully healthy, this could be one of the better teams in the NFL. And I look at their defense. Their defense is phenomenal. I love their defense. You had Joe Woods a year ago, completely terrible at the defensive coordinator spot. Kevin Stefanski went out, brought in a proven veteran as the defensive play caller, and Jim Schwartz immediately had an impact. We saw what they did against Cincinnati Bengals week 1. They beat that team 28-3. Understand that Joe Burrow had some injuries going on with that calf, but there was the defense they were able to play on those wide receivers. They played more press man coverage this season than they ever have in the last couple of years with this organization. You look at Denzel Ward, phenomenal corner, one of the best corners in the AFC. And then you also have Greg Newsome, the second as well, is also a phenomenal corner. You have one of the best cornerback duos in the NFL. Grant Delpit, who did miss time on the back end of the season, he was a phenomenal safety with this team as well in this system. Myles Garrett, we all know that he's one of the best defensive players in the NFL. He won Defensive Player of the Year, and he led this team in sacks with 14 sacks and 4 forced fumbles as well. He's literally getting double to triple team at times. You have Dalvin Tomlinson, who made a positive impact this season. Is a very good run stopper, and he can push the pocket as well. He had 3 sacks in the season. And that's a plus for him because, like I mentioned, he's a guy that's going to go out there, stop the run. He's not going to go out there and just push the pocket over and over again like Aaron Donald, but he could free up some things for guys like Myles Garrett and also Zadarius Smith as well. You're able to keep Zadarius Smith. Had 5.5 sacks on the season, had 1 forced fumble. Phenomenal guy to have alongside Myles Garrett. You can look at his sack numbers and say those are very low, but he does more than just get to the quarterback. He seals the edge, he stops the run, and he can make running backs go backwards as well. And that's one thing that he excelled in doing this season. Then you have the second best defensive player on this team in Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Now, a lot of people may disagree with that take. Jeremiah Osuokoromora is phenomenal. I go back to that San Francisco 49ers game. I understand that Trent Williams went out in that game. Christian McCaffrey went out. But even before those guys went out, you could see the plays that he was making on Deebo Samuel, the plays that he was making on Christian McCaffrey before he went down. And he was getting to Brock Purdy as well when they would blitz him up the middle of the field. He's a phenomenal linebacker. He's one of the best linebackers in the AFC, and he's the best linebacker on this team. And they got a steal with him a couple of years ago because he slid out of the first round. This kid is special. And then when it's time to pay him, they better cough up the money because he's one of the best young linebackers in the NFL. You also signed Jordan Hicks. He's a solid veteran to have around. He's not that prime Jordan Hicks, but he's a good guy to have around with this team. You have Devin Bush. Devin Bush is a bust. He was a first round pick a couple of years ago with the Steelers. I don't expect for him to do much with this defense, but he could possibly shock some people. He spent some time with the Seattle Seahawks, so maybe there's something there. I don't have high aspirations for Devin Bush. We will see. But if they can stay fully healthy, this is a Browns team that can be very dangerous. And even if the wide receivers get injured, they just need Deshaun Watson to go out there and just be healthy. He doesn't have to be that same Deshaun Watson that he was with the Houston Texans, because that Houston Texans team could not run the football consistently, and he only had one receiving option in DeAndre Hopkins. When they traded him away, he only had Brandon Cooks. Now he has a plethora of weapons coming out the backfield with Nick Chubb. We'll see if he can be the same running back. But Jerome Ford, he's a solid running back to have with Deontay Foreman. Then you have Jerry Jeudy, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, and David Njoku. If Deshaun Watson cannot go out there and be successful with this team, then you can look at him and say, hey, this was a horrible trade with the Cleveland Browns. But right now, I think the Cleveland Browns did make the right decision by going out there and trying to be aggressive to get their quarterback. He just has to stay healthy. And it starts with the pieces around him and the play calling. In the past, I was very critical of Kevin Stefanski and his play calling. This season, he shut me up. He was one of the best play calling head coaches in the NFL. If he can continue that, that would be phenomenal. Like I mentioned before, Deshaun Watson only lost one game starting this season, and that was against the Steelers in the Monday Night Football game. And you look at the way that they lost that game. It was a crazy play across the middle. Kenny Pickett gets the ball to George Pickens. It goes for a 70-plus yard touchdown. That's just a break in the defense. That's one play. Then you had the fumble on Deshaun Watson that went for 6. That is on Deshaun Watson, but that was just a horrible play. Then you had the pick 6 as well. Those are 21 points that you could say were fluke points, but they did happen. I'm not trying to make any excuses for the Browns because the Steelers went out there and they basically took the game away. But yet, the Browns are still in that football game. If Deshaun Watson doesn't fumble that ball for 6, we're talking about a different situation here. This team could possibly be 12-5 instead of being 11-6, because this is the same team that went out there and beat the Steelers with Dorian Thompson-Robinson as their starting quarterback. And then Dorian Thompson-Robinson was not ready for prime time because when they first went against the Baltimore Ravens, he threw 3 horrible interceptions in that game, which led up to them calling in Joe Flacco because P.J. Walker was not going to be your long-term starter for the rest of the season either. So they kind of lucked into that situation of getting Joe Flacco. You did go out there, you did sign Jameis Winston, similar to Joe Flacco, is just a major gunslinger. He's going to push the ball deep down the field. So you have a solid backup and you have a quarterback in Deshaun Watson that you hope that can be the next guy. But let me know in the comment section below. Do you believe the Cleveland Browns are the most complete team in the AFC North? And who do you have winning this division? The Baltimore Ravens, the Steelers, or the Cincinnati Bengals? And like I mentioned before, all of these teams are tough in my opinion. The Bengals, as long as Joe Burrow is fully healthy, that's going to be a tough team to beat. But the Browns match up with them very well, especially with their offensive line being weak. The Steelers are going to always be a tough team, but their secondary is in question, and their offensive line with the interior is in question as well. And will Russell Wilson be the right quarterback with that team? And as far as the Baltimore Ravens, you can say they're the best team in this division, but at the same time, a healthy Cleveland Browns team can give them a lot of problems if they stop Derrick Henry and they stop those wide receivers. So if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, each and every last one, guys, stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for watching the video, guys. God bless.